And I guess the day-to-day breakdown at Deloitte, do you mind just walking through like how a typical day or week would look like as a consultant? Or
Sure.
I'm
It
very
really
since I'm
depends.
done.
Yeah, I remember it was last year, but it really depends. So, like my time at Deloitte, I worked on a few loyalty programs in Canada. So, like retail and airline loyalty. I did a few cloud strategy, IT strategy based engagements. So, the days really depended on, it really varied depending on my role. So, if I was talking about loyalty, for example, so I did a lot of product management, business systems analyst based stuff. So it's basically like requirements gathering and then things like that. So typical agile environment, the buzzword agile people use. So on a daily basis, you do stand-ups, then you have client meetings where you collect requirements, you work with architecture teams to put solutions together, and then you like officially get business sign off, and then that gets built, and then that's you do UAT testing, you do testing and BAT testing, and then you as an analyst, I was day to day was basically me managing stakeholders, doing those meetings, getting requirements, documenting things. So we did a bunch of that. Um, when I was on the strategy side, it was basically a lot of surveys and questioning interviews. Basically, you just do a bunch of client interviews and you ask them a bunch of questions that give you a bunch of documentation. So at the beginning of the week, they'll give you a dump of information. You read and you study, you build a deck behind it. So your week goes into building decks all day. Then at the end of the week, you present it to the client, they make a bit changes, they give their feedback, and then it's basically an iterative process of that. At the same time, you also have your senior managers and your managers nitpicking everything. So you have to like
Like edit.
also appease them and the clients. It's like you're working with two clients at the same time. So you go through that on a daily basis. And then I went into integration design as well towards the end, where my day to day was similar to when I was doing the BSA work, but it was a bit different where I was actually sitting with our integration architects on our team, and then we were actually solutioning stuff and like building high level designs and designing like APIs. But the day to day was pretty much the same. Have stand up, speak to stakeholders, get requirements, design stuff, present it to the client, and then push it to testing.
Yeah, and you mentioned stand-up. What does that mean? Is that like
Oh,
position or
yeah, so stand-up meetings are basically like our scrum, whatever happens. It's like a daily meeting. You have a daily sync. You have for 15
oh
minutes.
like a status
It's
meeting pretty
like
much? Oh,
stats,
gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
basically, yeah. It's like an internal meeting that you do with your internal team.
Nice.
Yeah, I just realized that I don't know if that was a term used across the industry, but it's just a sync, basically,
Got
a
you.
daily sync you have. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I guess from Deloitte you went straight into Ada. How was Ada in terms of? I know you're currently working there in terms of your experience, and it relates to AI, which is like a pretty buzzword nowadays. What's your thoughts on that as well?
So my transition was really interesting because I reached a state at Deloitte where I was tired, exhausted, and I didn't know where things were going. And I was like, oh, I want to try something new. The AI space was booming, and I was, oh, it's cool to dive onto the emerging tech wave. The opportunity came, and I took it. Huge difference in just everything. Like, I had to get used to using a MacBook. I had to get used to using Slack versus
Oh yes, yeah.
Teams. So that was the tools were different. The approach to everything was different. Like the way you would talk to your manager is so different. The structure is different. Your team structure is different. There's less hierarchy. There's hierarchy, obviously. There's titles and stuff, but it feels very horizontal. Like you can talk to anybody across the company. You can share your ideas. You can share your frustrations. You can. There's no fear. I think the startup space is considered to be a bit more open-minded and chill. It is. There's obviously the work's a bit different. It's less structured in certain areas. I would say it's chaotic in certain places too, but it's just what it is.
Yeah.
My client work is obviously different too because when I was working on client stuff at Deloitte, there's massive teams, like teams of 200 people working on one project. But now most of my projects are just one to one. Like I do a project with a project manager, and I just work directly with the client. I don't have to deal with C-suite. I don't have to deal with any of that. I actually work with people who are working directly with the AI. A bunch of structural differences and just like the general culture differences were there. But I, again, like the skill set I got from
So
Deloitte,
yeah,
if you work from a consulting firm and you go to a different company, you're going to do really well. Like a lot of my friends in my current company as well, who came from consulting backgrounds, like their skill set is just way different.
right.
The skill set you have as a consultant really helps you do well in other companies afterwards.
Got you. And I
Yeah.
guess the day to day, is it like slightly similar, or do you mind
Oh,
whispering?
it's very different.
Oh, okay.
It's very
Got
different.
you.
So my day, I can walk you through my day today. So at Deloitte, you'd work on one project at max,
Yeah.
right? One big project. I would say at Ada, like I have 5 projects going on at
Oh
the same
wow.
time, 6 projects, because it's implementations, and every client project is at a different stage. So by the time one has started, the other one's ending. So it like piles up like that. And because I work in more of the implementation space where I help implement our product to our customers, there's just a lot, it's basically a lot of like product onboarding, enablement, helping customers solve their use cases, teaching them how to use the AI essentially and the platform. And the day to day, the way it looks is I don't have to speak to anybody. I could have days where I don't talk to anyone and I'll just be either, I'll have a build day, so where I'll be building stuff in the platform for the customer. I'll have days where it'll just be a bunch of meetings where we'll have syncs about the project we're working on. We'll have working sessions if the client doesn't understand things. We'll have enablement meetings where I'll teach them how to use the product. And that's like my day to day. It's pretty much every day. I either build or I have meetings where I'm syncing with the client, and that's it.